Why does the industry vision for 5G differ from actual 5G use cases now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you look globally, up till now, 5G has mainly delivered on this enhanced mobile broadband experience. It is arguably just a faster, slightly lower latency improvement on 4G. And as we said, if we're just doing TikTok and YouTube or mobile shopping on our phones, we don't need 300 megabit per second downloads. We sort of 4G was perfectly good. We've given users a better service experience in many scenarios where they don't necessarily need it. So yeah, the phase of 5G we're in at the moment is probably a little underwhelming. It's delivered a fantastic enhanced mobile broadband experience, but it hasn't created a huge amount of value for either for sort of consumers or the operators themselves. I think sort of when we look at all technologies, you have the original technology vision and the roadmap for what a technology is going to deliver, whether it's sort of 3G, 4G, or 5G. And then you have these phases of releases of the standards, and the very first release never delivers on the full vision of the technology standard. So 4G back in 2010 was not the 4G that we see now, or 4G in 2020. So features like narrowband IoT as a sort of a 4G IoT solution took many years to sort of come to fruition in many markets around the world as the standards evolve. And you see the same with 5G. The networks today are either release 15 or 16. When we get to release 18, which is going to be frozen next year, that is the next sort of 5G advanced, or some call it sort of 5.5G. And that has more features in it in terms of better uplink performance, new IoT opportunities around sort of reduced capacity, sort of low power devices, passive and ambient IoT, greater support for sort of enhanced and extended reality services. So there's a lot of features coming into 5G over the next couple of years that get you a little bit closer to that original vision. Autonomous cars, remote surgery in hospitals, those are nice kind of use cases that show the capabilities of the technology, but we're never going to be use cases that emerge sort of very early in the cycle. They are sort of much more the end point, the goal of the technology rather than the starting point. So I think from a service point of view, it has been a little disappointing in terms of the innovation that we've seen. As I said, I mean, there are countries and operators around the world doing good jobs. I've mentioned China a few times. They're not the only ones doing well with sort of enterprise 5G services, but certainly the 5G private network market in China is booming in a way we see in a much smaller scale in many other parts of the world. So those smart manufacturing, 5G in hospitals, in mining operations, in ports and transport hubs, there's some really quite exciting use cases happening there. So there's a lot of, and that is being delivered today. We don't need to wait for 5.5G in 2 or 3 years' time to be able to deliver on that. So all technologies are slow burners. They have these sort of 5 or 6 releases before we get to 6G. So there's still a lot of potential in 5G as a technology. And I think over the next couple of years, operators will focus a little bit more on identifying the real use cases that you absolutely need 5G for. And that's a little bit clearer in the business and enterprise market. It's still a little bit unclear in the consumer space. And I'd probably argue that the one by far the most successful consumer 5G application has probably been fixed wireless access. So 5G as a home broadband technology that in some scenarios can certainly outperforms DSL and sort of copper broadband, can rival in some situations sort of fiber broadband services. So there's some markets around the world where that represents a real new revenue opportunity for operators and sort of something that they weren't able to really sort of capitalize on with 4G. So certainly there are little sort of isolated pockets of good development of 5G, but in terms of fully fledged versus sort of emerging phases of 5G, we're kind of on that, very much on the cusp between the two at the moment.